Welcome to my video channel. I am the commander. My name is Francis. One of the major beefs that philosophers and atheists and people who have lost their faith in God often complain about, and it's something they point out, which is a legitimate point, is that there are many religions, okay? And that's true. There are many religions because man makes religion. Now, that usually comes from the fact that we feel threatened. When somebody feels threatened, they build weapon system, right? So the weapon of psychology is to build a super being that is active, and then somehow you can make it your friend, or somebody else doesn't like your version of God, and they build another God. They make another God. And that's why you come up with these multiple God religions. But there's the other aspect of religious faith, or the creation of gods, which is to comfort one in the idea that after death or in this life, the sufferings, the day-to-day sufferings like sickness or, poverty and the things like that can be answered by a God who is currently present, right? So you offer up your prayers to this God. So you create another God. There's the God of war. There's the God of love. There's the God of the hearth. The Romans, they also had their home gods, and that was praying to the family, the spirits of their dead ancestors, right? The ones that would be really nice and close to their house. The big gods have other things to worry about, But that's what I mean. They would seek out a God that was more familiar, more intimate, one that would understand the needs, the immediate needs of your heart and your home. And then there's one more aspect, which is where the darkness enters into it, where evil begins to enter into the fray. We know that evil exists. We know we can see it. So in these multi-god universes, you end up having all kinds of evil gods, or gods that are borderline evil, or what you might call rascals. Sometimes they're good and sometimes they're not. And so it goes on and on and on until you have a plethora of gods in this pantheon of gods from biggest to littlest. So the atheists come to the conclusion that in fact, they can't all be right. You cannot have all these gods. There cannot be this many gods. It doesn't make any sense. And a lot of people lose their faith because of that silliness, right? Because one god beats another god, and then you create a third god. And they all end up blending into this massive amount of gods that can't seem to get anywhere. Right. So if somebody comes along, if a scientist comes along and says, you know what, this isn't true, guys. God did not do this. There's proof that these reactions are chemical, and here I'm going to show you. And then they're like, kill that guy, because he's going to diminish the importance of religion among the people. And if the respect for the gods goes out the window, society will collapse. Okay? And it doesn't usually happen that way. But what happens is a lot of people go underground. They're like, gosh, this guy just proved that that's not a god doing that he can recreate this. So a man can now do something that a god could do yesterday, but now a man can do it. That's why you get this mad scientist sort of cliche going on, right? This guy hiding in a cave somewhere coming up with cool shit. Iron Man builds this Iron Man suit in a cave in Afghanistan. And, we just use that cliche all the time. Why? Because only a crazy lunatic would fight the system when his whole life is on the line. Science, its job being to explain these things to us, does away with the concepts of superstition attributable to phenomena that are terrifying and weird, like meteorites or volcanoes. Okay? That doesn't do away with the concept of a god. It simply explains that storms are not angry gods fighting on a mountaintop. That's all science has done. That's its limitation. And that is the greatness of science. It can help us to relax, helps us to do cool stuff, learn how to fly, get to the moon, whatever, get down to the bottom of the ocean and check things out. But it can only do the practical because it's only dealing with the mechanical. So let's do a quick summary here, just real quick, so that we can move on to the next point. So we understand where polytheism comes from, right? It comes from insecurities, comes from desire for the secrets of the world that are hidden from our human eyes. We look for warmth. We want to win a war. There's a multitude of reasons why people create gods. We do the same with the superhero complex we have now. Marvel and its superhero universe, or DC Comics, right? Superheroes. This is what the world of the multi-god universe looks like. All right. So science comes along and says, listen, these are not gods. This is a storm. This is a sandstorm. These are winds. They just come and go. The ocean is this, blah, blah, blah. The science answers a lot of questions about the physical world. And its job really is to whittle away at these superstitious beliefs in order to make us confident that the world of material, the reality around us is understandable, if not completely understood. But the four great mysteries that still remain are death, life after death, evil, which never seems to go away, and I'm going to say love. Love is a mystery still, and science doesn't explain it. It explains attraction, but not love. But is love even relevant to a discussion about polytheism and monotheism? Well, of course it is. So after we've run through the gamut of creating a multitude of gods, why does monotheism sort of appeal to us as a little more rational? Why can we make it a little bit more approachable? Because it's a singular, and when you love somebody or want them to love you, it goes from general, broad, multitude of people to a singular, and that is yourself. You want to be loved for you. And this is why people often end up picking a favorite god in the multi-god system, building a temple to one particular god because that particular god, in their mind, answered a prayer one day and they got what they wanted, so they built a shrine. Okay? Now, that's all right because it makes sense within the human condition to attribute to somebody who gave you what you wanted some sort of special affection, okay, or gratitude. But that's not love. Love is a step beyond that. Love enters into the realm of giving yourself to that person and receiving that person in their personhood, in their totality, to yourself, right? Between the two. So the two shall become one. And everybody, I don't care what you are, what you consider yourself to be, you want to be loved and you want someone to give yourself to. Even if you're a complete narcissist, you want people to love you for being so awesome. If you're not and you want to be in love, that means you want to give yourself to somebody and you want them to choose you above all else, which is why it comes down to a singular. You end up finding one person and growing in love with that person. And that's cool because that's what love is about. Singularity, right? Singularity of mind, of heart. And that's when monotheism becomes relevant. And then what happens in the Old Testament, if you read the Bible, you'll find that the God of the Old Testament describes himself as a jealous God, and he will not stand other gods. And he will lay waste and beat you up and trash the place if you don't choose him. Which is, lo and behold, a very emotional way to understand God. But it's perfectly understandable if you consider that this God is in love. And at one point you described your love for him and you're cheating on him, so he goes crazy. So the symbology and the way of speaking, let's call it, in the Old Testament is one of a jealous man who is after his girl who's been unfaithful to him, who goes back for her, beats the crap out of everybody around her, takes her back, forces her back. But he knows that you can't force somebody to love you. So he wants to win her back by showing his dedication. A lot of fights in the Old Testament between the God of the Hebrews and the God of other tribes and peoples. And the God of the Hebrews has to go to war and beat the crap out of who knows how many people die to prove that he's serious about his love for his people. Now that became known among many tribes that the God of the Hebrews is a very dangerous God. There were many kings that had other gods, Moloch, Baal, whatever. I mean, there's a billion of them. Who gives a crap? They're all demons anyway. They're all lying. And so is the God of the Hebrews a real God, is really what it comes down to. But for the time being, we know that there's a threat to the chosen people. And when she runs off, God, the jealous God and the protective God, goes after her to save her. So he's always looking to save his bride, protect her from something. Given all we know about how multi-gods are created, the history of gods, the history of religions, so many gods, right? Then there's the God of the Old Testament for the Hebrew people, right? What makes him so special? What makes you so special, buddy? Okay, we've discussed how he sort of asserts his love in a very male-female sort of way, addressing the chosen people. And that would point to, if Jesus Christ, who claims to be God, on numerous occasions actually, if he is God, then he has to prove that not only does he encapsulate all the qualities of the Old Testament God, he has to satisfy what is left to prove if you are a God. Namely, death is not a threat to you, that you understand what is next, that the afterlife, okay? You also have to prove that you are above it all, yet personal, right? You are superior to anybody else, including the Romans of the day and their gods, and that you are yet still very personal on an individual level with individual people. And finally, you have to sort of illustrate and demonstrate and communicate a genuine love for each person in the world. Given the nature of how many nations and peoples and the Romans and the Jews and the splits among the Jews and the Canaanites and all these different groups of people, does he actually prove and check off all these things which would qualify him as a personal, living, supreme being? And that is the question that we will ask. And you have to go into the New Testament understanding that all these things have to be proven by this man, Jesus Christ.
And who do you say that I am?
I say you are the Messiah. The Son of the living God.